A new Times and YouGov poll out this morning has Reform UK still ahead on 23%. That's 1 point in front of Labour. The Conservatives are down at 19%. Times Radio presenter and political commentator Adam Boulton joins us now. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning.
It's an interesting poll for Reform UK, isn't it? Because there've been a couple recently that have shown them slipping back slightly, and maybe helped a little by Andy Burnham, Labour, pushing forward a little bit. Does this show that they are still a force to be reckoned with, do you think?
Well, it certainly shows they're a force to be reckoned with. I mean, basically, this does confirm the recent trend, which is that Reform UK is down from its highs around 30%. And frankly, that grouping you talk about, with a couple of points separating three parties, is all within the margin of error. What it shows is that they are all in contention. And as we know, in the way our political system works, first past the post in a multi-party system, just a few points can make all the difference. Although most people, I suspect, if you projected that poll into a general election, you'd probably still get Labour as the largest party. And that is a big change, of course, from what we were seeing 6 months ago. There's no doubt that Reform UK has been on the slide, but they're still contenders.
Yes, and I suppose they have announced a policy yesterday talking about immigration, which is territory which they previously have been very comfortable in. The response to that policy, though, is taken differently now, I think, partly because, Adam, and I wonder your thoughts on this, because people are assessing them as a party that could form a government as opposed to an insurgent party that's making suggestions for things that may never happen. I mean, the idea that the Navy could return people who are coming across the Channel in small boats to France and disembark them basically by force if the French don't agree. It's not gone down well with the French. It's been criticised by commentators here too. Is that making things difficult for Nigel Farage?
Well, I think what Nigel Farage is trying to do at the moment, and of course he faces his own electoral challenge getting back into Parliament, is to regenerate, if you like, to reinvigorate those people who were tempted to go for reform. Therefore, that means emphasising, pretty extreme policies as a way of attracting them back. And of course, we are seeing Kemi Badenoch move the Conservative Party in the direction of some of the reform positions. So that I think is what's going on. Whether it works or not is a different matter. Partly, I think, because the shine has come off Nigel Farage. Whatever you think about it, many people look askance at accepting a £5 million gift and other stories that we've seen in the Times and the Sunday Times about the financing of the party, which does suggest that if people have a low opinion of politics, that Reform UK is not offering something shiny and different.
Just finally, Adam, we were talking with William Hague and Kezia Dugdale just there about a Prime Minister's holiday. I mean, you've been around for lots of Prime Ministers taking holidays, not taking holidays. What's your general sense of it? Is it a good idea or not?
Well, I think they're only human, and it's very difficult to win. I think in this case, Andy Burnham has possibly made two mistakes. One is, as a senior member of the Parliamentary Press Pack said to me yesterday, you don't get a new job and go on holiday after 2 weeks, even although this is the holiday period. And I think a lot of people will criticise him for that, not the holiday, but the timing of it. Second thing is, they were obviously sensitive to this. They briefed journalists it was happening under an embargo yesterday, but they've not disclosed where he's going. That, I think, is a big mistake, not least because there'll be a chase to try and find out where he is. And of course, the public are ever vigilant as well. But also because that does sound as if they're being a bit sheepish. I mean, the person who was probably best at handling holidays was David Cameron. We know he was very good at chillaxing. And he, of course, always made a point of having those photo opportunities at the beginning of his holidays, which became famously so-called pointing at fish in fish shots photo op. That, I think, is the way to do it. A relatively modest holiday that you let the press in on. Of course, Tony Blair and Boris Johnson, they got into trouble for having exotic holidays and not being quite clear who was paying for it. Theresa May, she used to go to the Alps for long walks, and her entourage that she took with her had to sort of plod along behind her rather unhappily. Margaret Thatcher, I think, was probably the model for those people who think the Prime Minister should be at it 24/7, 365 days a year. She used to have to be persuaded to take a few days off at a schloss in Switzerland. And by all accounts from her aides, all she did was sit and wait for the phone to ring to give her an excuse to get back to number 10.
Adam, a fascinating insight as always. Thanks very much. That is Times Radio presenter Adam Boulton. His show, of course, on a Sunday morning at 10. It's time for our daily briefing on politics, business and sport. And we start with politics and the Times politics newsletter editor Stefan Boscia. Good morning, Stefan.
Morning.
Now, the Education Secretary Lucy Powell has written an article in the Times today saying the current school system is a straitjacket. What's she talking about?
Well, she's talking about the lack of options for people who want to get a technical education in school, and this is a part of the reforms last week, which will see GCSE students able to study more technical subjects alongside a core package of subjects like English and maths and science. And she's really, I think, here responding to Michael Gove mostly, who had an op-ed in the Times last week saying that these reforms show a lack of ambition for working class kids, that they will end up rewarding failure, more or less. And she is sitting back, she's saying that this is about giving students from many different backgrounds and many different academic levels and also many different academic interests, more of a range of subjects, and also a chance to get into the workforce in an easier way. And she's still pursuing this argument that the reason there are so many young people who are unemployed in this country is because of the education system, and she puts that back on Go. But I think that while it's sort of a good starting point, I think it does not really consider the fact that they'd start jobs for a lot of people who would want to go through technical subjects at this time for many parts of the country. It's
such an interesting point, that, and we have Miata van Buller on the programme shortly talking about a new link essentially with an employer that's going to help. But a lot of the things that they're talking about doing are things like getting people driving licences and helping people write CVs. So it'll be interesting to see how that links up. Elsewhere, Andy Burnham has said he will be relentless in stopping channel crossings. Is he going to do anything differently to Keir Starmer, though?
Well, it doesn't really sound like it so far. I mean, he talked about taking this really seriously. He went to Dover yesterday. He talked about more enforcement. He also talked about giving more safe and legal routes for asylum seekers to try to drop the demand for people smugglers. These are the things that have been tried. They haven't worked. And I think that if he just goes down the same route of saying essentially he's going to smash the gangs with new police enforcement tactics, there's only a limit to this. And while the last year there has been a drop in numbers since 2025, Labour's first full year in government, they are still elevated, very far above what they were pre-COVID. And I think that anyone who is really talking about this issue now, and I think that Burnham will get to this place within the next 12 months, is really talking about some sort of level of deterrent in the form of return to somewhere.
Which is what we're likely to hear from Reform UK, I think, later on this morning. And you'll hear that here on Times Radio. Finally, Stefan, Rupert Lowe, speaking of Reform UK, is offering Nigel Farage a deal. Is he likely to take it, though?
I don't think so. He was pretty lukewarm on the idea yesterday, and I think that some of the red lines that Rupert Lowe is talking about will probably not be ones that Farage would want to meet. Lowe said that he would only do a pact with Reform if they agree to things like a burqa ban, banning halal meat, having a referendum on death penalty. I mean, that one particularly zany in his list of asks for reform. And I just think that Farage will, firstly, he wouldn't want to be dictated to by someone he kicked out of his own party. But secondly, I think that a lot of this stuff does flirt too far with the Tommy Robinson sort of elements of the right. And I think that, while banning burqa has been something Reform has flirted with before, banning halal meat is probably just a bit too far. I mean, that's just something that would be seen as so punitive to so many people in this country that I just don't see him following it up. And also, I think that if he really wants to go down that path, I think he would shed a lot of voters anyway from the more sort of Tory voters he has picked up, the more moderate.
Do you think Rupert Lowe is offering that pact with those conditions, knowing that Nigel Farage would never say yes? Is it deliberate?
Probably is, yeah. I mean, I think that Lowe has done a good job of shivving off votes from the right of the Reform Party, and they have a pretty strong, stable percentage of 4 and 5%, which has stayed the whole time. And I think that he needs to keep doing things to remind these voters why they wouldn't want to vote Reform when it came to the crunch, when it came to an election. And I think he'd have to, for the next 3 years, have a narrative that Farage is a sellout. Farage doesn't really believe in the cause that he is trying to push.
Stefan, great to chat to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
That is Stefan Boscia there, the Times Politics newsletter editor, and you can read his newsletter every morning at 9 if you subscribe. Head to your Times account and click on newsletters.
Worth pointing out that Restore beat the Tories in the Manchester mayoral by-election, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
So they are, I mean, they've not disappeared, have they? I mean,
Nope.
6, 7, 8% is a thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That would be a concern to both Reform and the Tory party.
Yeah, and I think for Reform UK, I mean, they're in a bit of difficulty at the moment, I think, trying to work out how they move forward from here. Their poll ratings are sliding slightly. I think Nigel Farage has had a bit of a crisis of confidence, perhaps. But for Reform UK to win, if they are going to try and win, they need to win with a broad base of support. Yeah. And a broad base of support probably won't come from people, as Stefan says there, who want to ban halal meat and reinstate the death penalty. So they've got to resist that pull towards the far right, the right that we're talking about there, but appeal to enough people while keeping their base on side. And I think that's what's really difficult for them to navigate at the moment, that they just don't really know how to do that.
Nicholas, is this the opening salvo in Lowe's attempt to be the successor to Farage, a man obviously on borrowed time?
Well, it's an interesting question, that, because it's not clear who, I mean, apart from perhaps Richard Tice, but, you know, Richard Tice and Nigel Farage are very, very close at the moment. I mean, there are other personalities within Reform UK, but could they take on the mantle if Nigel Farage were to leave?
Particularly given that those you're talking about are predominantly connected to the Tory party.
Yeah.
It's an interesting few months politically, however you look at it.